Hello, everyone. Welcome to Raising Finance for Pharmacists. I am Chris O'Shea, and with me, I've got Dan Fearon, who's one of our finance experts at Samira. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Chris. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad at all. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Right. So we've had a lot of inquiries lately from people who are either thinking about or in the process of buying a pharmacy, or they want to finance their current pharmacy. So we thought we'd do this webinar to just get the message out there, let people know what their options are, how we can help, that kind of thing. So, Dan, let's kick off. What have you got for us tonight?
Yeah, so I thought, first of all, I'll just sort of introduce myself in a little bit more detail. So, as Chris said, I'm Dan Fearon, and I'm a finance manager at Samira. In terms of my experience, I worked for RBS for 20 years, and in the last 10 years, I was in the healthcare department. So that's dealing with doctors, dentists, pharmacists. I've now been at Samira for the last 4 years, and we are a finance broker who specialise in healthcare. So it was quite a nice fit for myself in terms of moving to Samira. So we have a lot of experience in the sector, as well as myself. You've got Nigel Crossman, who has over sort of 40 years in the sector. So yeah, plenty of experience in the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need anything, essentially to do with anything, then let us know. There's a chance we can help.
Yeah. So just like Chris said, so we thought it'd be a good idea to sort of go in a bit more depth in terms of buying a dental practice and sort of how you finance a dental practice and what banks are looking for. So we've done a quick presentation on that, and hopefully it sort of answers a lot of your questions. If you're a little bit unsure about anything, you can always reach out to us. Absolutely. So in terms of the starting point, so one big factor is, what affects your ability to borrow. So get your house in order. So what does that mean? So in terms of the finance, what will banks be looking at for yourself in terms of the finance? So first of all, they're going to be having a look at your existing bank statements. How do you run your existing finances? They want to have a look to make sure, you've got plenty of funds coming in, you haven't got overdrawn balances, and you're running your account in a good order, really. They want to have a look that you've, saved some money for your deposits, and that will help you in terms of when you're arranging the finance, because the banks will expect you to put some cash towards the transaction yourself. Your credit score. So if, you've had poor credit in the past, banks will take that into account when they're looking at the finance. If you haven't repaid previous debt, why would they want to lend extra debt to you? So that's something they really need to have a look at. And your professional background and experience. Obviously, as a pharmacist, you know how to be a pharmacist, but other things that you will need to sort of take into account is obviously, one, being a pharmacist, but what other sort of expertise do you have? Have you managed a pharmacy? Do you understand stock ordering? Do you understand staff rotas? Have you taken on sort of increasing the scripts at your existing pharmacy? That type of information is very useful, and the banks will expect you to put a CV together so they can understand what experience you have, one, as a pharmacist, and two, because you're going into practice ownership, what experience do you have in that level? Decide what size of pharmacy that you're looking at. So sort of be realistic. What savings have you put in place to buy a pharmacy? There could be a pharmacy that comes onto the market, it's worth £2 million. Is that realistic for you to purchase? Do you have enough deposit to put towards that transaction? And the last point in terms of the starting point is know who to approach. So, ourselves, we're finance brokers. So, more than happy for you to come to us. But if you were thinking of possibly approaching a bank directly, although RBS could do some finance on pharmacy, it's speaking to the right person. Are you speaking to the right manager who can look at the finance application for you? Because if you're speaking to a generalist, healthcare sector is very specialist. So they would need to understand what they're looking at, because you may not get the answer that you're looking for.
Okay, well, just quickly, in terms of the professional background and stuff the banks like to see about your working history. So you're saying if you haven't got involved in the day-to-day running behind the scenes, then that's something you really should be doing. So getting involved, like essentially volunteering yourself to handle things like stock ordering and
staff rotas. And the thing to bear in mind as well is when you're putting your CV together, you're probably focused on the pharmacy skills that you have, and the further training you've got. But you may be doing these skills already as part of your day-to-day job without even thinking about the extra skills that you've developed. So it's having a real think about what you're doing. But yeah, you're right. If you're in the pharmacy and there is an opportunity to take on some extra roles, that will certainly sort of help in terms of when you're looking to go into the management side, because one, it'll help running your new business because you'll have those skills and you've faced those problems previously.
Okay, what if someone's been working locum in a pharmacy, say for 2 or 3 years? Is that enough experience, or are they going to want to see more?
Yeah, no, 2 to 3 years. Normally 3 is the sort of the starting point, but 2, if you're coming on to 3 years, that's fine. Lenders will look at that. That's enough experience as a pharmacist to start looking at lending for you.
Okay, and if you had, if you really wanted to buy a pharmacy soon, but you didn't have that experience, would you be able to say, put in your application, I'm hiring a office manager or something who will do that for me, who has the experience, or do they really want to see you as the borrower?
Yeah, so really, they do want to see you as the borrower to have that experience in place. But if you're sort of maybe 2 years in and you've got other members of your family who are pharmacists or other people who have them skills that you can call upon, then that would certainly help the application, because if you don't have that many years yourself, that having other people that you can lean on and rely on would certainly help in terms of the application.
Okay, brilliant. Fair enough.
Perfect. So I'm just going to flip to the next screen. Okay, so in terms of you've found your pharmacy, so what are the next steps that you would need to look at? So what the banks will look at, they'll look at it in 2 stages. So first of all, like I was discussing it yourself, so they'll look at your income and expenditure. So what's your income at the moment? What are your costs? What sort of background assets have you got? What sort of savings have you got? So they'll want to look at income and liability, everything that's coming into your account, going out, so they can work out what you actually need to draw from the business. Your accounts. So most locums, you'll have a set of accounts. So you may run that as a limited company, you may do that as a sole trader. So you'll just want to see what sort of income you've been generating over the last 3 years. So tax returns are fine as well if you don't sort of do your formal accounts as a sole trader. And then the CV that we spoke about earlier, about having the managerial skills to show when you're putting your CV together. And then the bank statement. So 6 months bank statements. So if you've run your locum account as a limited company, they need to see those business bank statements. And then as a personal bank statement, they need to see what your income and expenditure is on that. So like I said before, they want to see sort of nice, clean bank statements. There's no charges on there. There's no unpaid items. Yeah. They want to see that you've conducted your account in a suitable manner for them to be able to lend funds to you.
Okay, brilliant. So essentially you're just trying to prove that you will pay things back and you have a history of
pretty much, yeah. So they're just looking at that based on what your history is in terms of the banking and your income and expenditure, that you've got a good track record.
Okay, brilliant.
And onto the business, which is an important part when you're looking at the finance. So they'll need the last 3 years accounts. So what they're trying to do here is see a track record of the business over a period of time, because if 1 year has a spike and it's making loads of money, but then next year it's not making so much, the bank needs to see that trend and understand why that's happening. What they want to see also is what the profits are, what the net, so what the turnover is, what the net profits are, so they can get an understanding of that business. The sales particulars. So normally what will happen if someone's looking to sell a pharmacy, they will normally have it sort of valued by a selling agent. So on that, on the sales particulars, it will give you some details about who works there, what sort of monthly scripts they're undertaking, how long the lease is, all that information you need to see, and also the purchase price, because the banks will need to understand how much that's going to be, so how much you need for that. The FP34s, so they'll need to see what the monthly scripts are. So how many items is the practice doing per month as it stands. So again, that sort of ties into the accounts, so they can sort of cross-reference them so that it looks in place. Management accounts. So this is this is something new that a lot of banks are asking for. In the past, they never really used to ask for management information. But so as if you think about it realistically, once your set of accounts are done, they're sort of 12 months out of date once they're completed. So what banks are trying to do now is get an up-to-date snapshot of what the business is doing at this moment in time. And now with all the sort of systems that you have in place, like Xero, etc., it's quite easy for a business to run off their management information. And it's useful for you as well, because you get more of an understanding of what you're buying. So you get an up-to-date snapshot of that business instead of going on historic accounts, although they may be the 2023 accounts, but the year end is finished, but that's for the previous year. So you get an up-to-date of this is what the business is doing, this is what the turnover is, this is the business's cost at this moment in time.
Okay. And I'm guessing those management accounts is something that your accountant can draw up quite easily for you.
Yeah, so if you're on a system like Xero, which we sort of use in terms of Samira accountants, they can run these figures off quite quickly and get an up-to-date snapshot. I think it's normally to the month of what that business is doing, what the turnover is, what the costs are. They'll just be run in sort of management information figures, so it won't be as detailed as the end of year accounts, but it'll still give you a flavour of what that business is doing. So if the turnover is starting to dip, it will come out in the management information.
Okay, fantastic.
Just going to move to the next screen now. Okay, so in terms of finance, how long does it take to get the finance in place? So each bank sort of works slightly differently, but in effect, what we do as finance brokers, so we would gather all the information in. So the list that I've just gone through in terms of the personal information and the business information, we would get all that info in. We would write a report to the lenders, and then basically we would send it off for offers. What would happen a couple of days after that, the banks would come back with what they can do in terms of the finance. So all banks differ. They've got different lending policies, different loan to values that they can look at. So they'll come back with, the size of loan that they can obtain, the rate that they're looking to do it on, and the term that they can do it. They also have in there their arrangement fees, if they need a valuation. Most pharmacies, they will need a valuation on, but they'll list all those different offers within the comparison table, which we would send to you. Once we've sent that comparison table to you, what we would do would have a follow-up conversation, go through the pros and cons of all the different offers. But at the end of the day, it will be your decision of who you want to go with. We can let you know, about the banks we've been dealing with in terms of speed and, how they are to work with, but you will pick which lender you want to go with. Once you've done that, once you've picked the lender, what we would do from there, we would take the application to a full credit application. And once you made that decision, you're probably looking around about a week. They may be slightly longer at the moment in terms of that, but it's still quite a quick turnaround time, which is important because what you'll have, once you've found that pharmacy that you want to take forward, the seller will want to know quite quickly that you have the finance in place, and they'll want to see some sort of paperwork from the lenders to say, yes, I've got the finance in place to take this forward. So we'll move as quickly as possible to get something in place for you.
Okay, and would I be right in assuming that it'll be quicker to do, quicker, easier, and more likely to be successful if they were to do this through a broker like us as opposed to trying to do it themselves? So
the I suppose the advantage of using a broker, which I do come on to a bit later, but as you brought it up, I'll mention it now. So the advantage of using a broker is if you go to ABC Bank, you'll only get the offers from ABC Bank. If you go to another bank and you have to send them all that paperwork again, you'll only get those offers. So the advantage for us is that we will put everything together. Where we specialize in healthcare, we will send it to all the healthcare lenders that we work with. So you'll get 4 or 5 different offers back at the same point, and then you can make a comparison of all the different lenders that you're working with. So you can make an informed decision of what you're looking at. The difference also is we know what the banks are looking for and how they want the deal structured. So we make sure we put it in a format. So we don't just get this information in and send it off and hope for the best. What we will do is get all this information. We will do an analysis of the information that we've got. We will sense check it as well in terms of information. If there's a locum there at the moment and going forward there won't be a locum, we will add that back in to help with costs, also help with serviceability of the loan costs. We will just make sure that everything makes sense before we're sending it to the lenders, because if you send it to them and it's incorrect, they'll just come back with a negative answer. So what we do is get everything in. We will write a report for the banks and in effect write a credit report for them, and we will make our assumptions of is it serviceable, what the pros and cons are, what the mitigants are. So everything is written up in the correct way to for the lenders to give the answer that we're looking for. And like I was saying before, so myself I had 20 years experience in the bank, Nigel sort of 40 years, so we know what the banks are looking for, and we used to receive these applications, so we sort of try and make it as user friendly to read through and make sure that we're bringing out the right points in the application.
Okay, brilliant. Some really good points there.
I'll just move to the next screen, which so how much can I borrow? This is a question I get all the time, is how much can I borrow? So like it says there, so each case is assessed on its own merit. So if you was applying for something, Chris, you may have a different answer than if I was applying for something. So they would do look at each case on an individual basis. And that's why they have the income and expenditure forms, because they have to assess that person as well as the business. So just because my friend said he got this doesn't necessarily mean that's the stuff, that's what the answer that you're going to get, or the same sort of terms that they're going to get. So generally for the goodwill element, so on the pharmacy side, it's normally broken down into goodwill and freehold. On the goodwill side of things, borrowers will do sort of between 70 and 80% of the goodwill valuation. So this is the point when I was talking about sort of making sure you've got the deposit in the background. If you're looking at that £2 million pharmacy, but you haven't got sort of £400,000 in the background to do as your contribution, then it's not going to go forward. So that's why we're saying about being realistic on the pharmacies that you're looking at, obviously, and then making sure that you're aware that you've got to put some cash into the transaction for the banks. In terms of the term that they'll look at, so for a goodwill loan, they'll normally match the loan term to the lease. So if you've got a 15-year lease in place, then the banks will do a loan term over 15 years. Likely as well, if you've got a 10-year lease in place, then they'll do a 10-year loan. So hopefully what should happen on the seller's side is when they know they're going to sell the pharmacy, that they've created a new lease so that you've got a nice long period in place, because it will help with serviceability. Because if they've only got maybe a 1 or 2 year lease in place, it's very hard to fund a loan, for the size, just for argument's sake, a pharmacy of 500,000 over sort of 2-3 years. So hopefully they've got in place a lease for 15 years, and that will be enough time to prove serviceability on the loan and make it affordable for yourselves.
Okay.
So the other element on pharmacy as well is you've got the goodwill element, which is normally linked to a lease, but they also come out on freeholds as well. So you can have the opportunity to purchase a freehold of the pharmacy. Freeholds, they can go up to 100% of the finance on that. And then they'll do the lending over 20 years also. So the good thing, obviously, freehold, you're getting that asset, you're sort of protecting the business going forward. So if you get to a point later on and you don't want to be a pharmacist anymore, but you like to keep in the freehold, you've got the opportunity there to sell the goodwill, but you can retain that freehold and still get a rental income going forward. The thing to bear in mind as well when you're looking at the loan to values and stuff like that is, we can quote loan to values. The bank will give you 70%, 80%, but it needs to be repaid. So you may want to buy the freehold, you may want to buy the goodwill, but the business needs to generate enough income to pay that debt back. So these are just sort of guidelines on what the banks can do, but there needs to be enough money within that business to pay the loan back.
Right. Okay. And I'm going to assume that if you just like a normal mortgage, if you wanted to put in like front up more money for the purchase,
you can do it. Yeah. So if you didn't need as much in terms of a loan and you had some family monies in the background, then yeah, you can put that in and take a lesser loan. Yeah. So I say these are guidelines. So they're 80% is probably the maximum that they would go to. But yeah, if you want to go a little bit lower, if you have cash available, then yeah, that's no problem whatsoever. The other point as well, yeah, if on the deposit, you may have raised the cash yourself, but you know, sometimes family monies comes into the equation as well. So if you do have family monies in the background and they're willing to give you that as a gift, which needs to be non-borrowed, banks will accept that as well in terms of the transaction. So as long as they're happy that you don't have to pay those monies back and they can be moved, it could be used to help the purchase, that's not a problem whatsoever. Or if maybe you've got a property that's unencumbered and you want to sort of throw, if you didn't have the physical cash but wanted to throw that into the transaction to help with the loan to value, then again banks will more than happy look at that. As long as the loan is affordable, then yeah, they will certainly look at that.
Okay, I hesitate to ask this question because I know how quickly the info is going to go out of date. But do you have any sort of guidelines or suggestions on what kind of interest rate people might expect?
Yeah, so in terms of the interest rates at the moment, so you're looking something between maybe 2.5% to maybe 4% plus base.
Yeah.
So that's roughly what you'd be looking at in this sector. Base rate at the moment, as it is 4.25. So obviously that will need to be factored in if you're looking at a variable rate. But there are fixed rates available if you want to look at them. It's hard to give a fixed rate because they do fluctuate on a regular basis. But if you wanted to take a fixed rate, you can certainly look at that, because the advantage of a fixed rate is you know what your costs are going to be for the next maybe 3 to 5 years, and you haven't got to worry what's going to happen with base rate. So lenders will look at them as well. So that's not a problem if you want to look at fixed rates, but I say variable rates are available as well.
Okay, fantastic.
And on this, the point just at the bottom in terms of lenders purchase price stroke valuation. So this is quite an important part in terms of the transaction. So what the lenders will do, they will do a valuation on the business, and it's their valuation that really matters. The sales agent may sort of give a value, and if the sales agent's value and the lender's value are in alignment, or there's not a lot of difference, that's not a problem. They'll do the loan to value against that. If for some reason the lender's value is lower, or if you wanted to overpay on the pharmacy, so you know it's on the market for 500,000, but you wanted to make sure you secure the site and you pay an extra 20,000 on top of that, that will need to come from your own funds. The banks will only lend in terms of their loan to value, so for an example 80% against their valuation of the pharmacy. So if you wanted to put extra into a transaction, or there was a slight difference in terms of the valuation, that would need to come from your own personal funds. The bank won't fund that because it would be over their credit policies in terms of loan to value. So that's something to bear in mind. If you do get into a situation where you really want to buy that pharmacy, but you've had to bid over what the valuation is, those funds would need to come from your own personal funds.
Okay, is it possible then? I mean, it might not be with the process, but is there a possibility then that you could get into some sort of bidding war with another possible buyer, but then you'd have to essentially, that bidding war would be out of your own pocket?
Yes, yeah. So if you got into that situation where you're bidding against someone else, and it's sealed bids, and then you bid over, in that situation, you would need to fund that from your own funds, because for the bank, they would do a valuation on the pharmacy. If it come in at 500,000, that's what they would use for their valuation, and they'll do 80% against that. if you chose to pay, 520,000, that extra money would need to come from you.
Right. Okay.
So we sort of covered this a little bit in the other part in terms of why use a broker. So I'm not going to go through it in too much detail because I've sort of covered it a little bit. But just on there, like I was saying before, really is, we know who we're talking to now. We've got a lot of experience in terms of looking at these transactions. So, we're doing a sense check of the figures that are coming in. We'll challenge the figures within there. We're making sure that everything's structured in the right way and putting it to the right people. And so, like I mentioned before, really, you could go to RBS and go to a generalist manager, and they'll tell you that they don't do unsecured lending in pharmacy. And we know full well, if we speak to the healthcare manager at that bank, that they do. So it's making sure you're speaking to the right people, getting everything sort of, packaged in the right way. Because what's annoying, I see, when in my old days as a relationship manager, is getting a leading and then having to chase information. I need some bank statements. I need this information. I need this to go forward, which one delays the process and is quite time consuming. So when we send everything over, we make sure we've got everything ready for the bank. So we've sort of given them a credit application that they can just move on. It's got all the bank statements, it's got all the income and expenditure, it's got all the details of the business, it's got our assumptions, our thoughts on it, the serviceability calculations that we do. So we give them that pack so they can move quite quickly with the application. And then, like I said before, if I suppose, like you said about a bidding war situation, or if they need to get the answer quite quickly to secure that pharmacy, getting that information to them quickly makes it easier for the bank to get things to their credit department. Because as I say, if you send it over to them and then suddenly they're chasing around for info, it just delays everything, and you may miss out on the pharmacy.
Okay. So it's not just about making things easier or quicker for the pharmacist in question or being a middleman. It's literally about making it more likely to be accepted as an application.
Yeah. So say in terms of doing it, one element, yes, it is easier for the client because they're just dealing with one person. But yeah, it's doing it quickly and making sure you get the right answer, because time is precious in these transactions because there's so many people looking to buy the pharmacies. So if we can make it go as quickly as possible and also get the right answer for them, then obviously it puts them in a stronger position with the seller.
Okay. And would you can help with things like negotiation as well? Because I'm assuming when they go and get their quote, they're essentially just going to accept what they've been given in most circumstances, but you'd be able to essentially negotiate a better deal.
In terms of the
loan, that's like the loan application and the offer that the bank give, would you be able to help with negotiating and that?
I suppose that sort of goes on to the next point, really. Yeah. So so we don't get preferential rates. So if a broker tells you, we get preferential rates because we're a broker, that's not actually the case. But if you're going directly to a bank, there'll be one transaction that you send them. That would be the first one. Obviously, for ourselves, we send a number of transactions to the banks and built up a good relationship. So, for us, they could do something in terms of the fees, getting those added to the loan. Sometimes the rates could be slightly cheaper, not because we're a broker, but because we've got a good relationship with the banks. They may quote slightly differently to us than they may do to the general public. So it's not that we get preferential rates. I couldn't say that word then, sorry. But it's because we send a lot of transactions there, understand the market, understand what they're looking for. We get the right answers. We'll get the fees added to the loans where we can. So we're putting everything and putting the client in a better position by going through us directly.
Brilliant. And you're talking about fees. Are there any other, off the top of your head, any big fees that people might not realise they're going to have to factor in to this kind of thing?
Yeah. So in terms of the other fees that you're going to have to look out for, so the banks will want you to do a valuation of the pharmacy yourself. So you'll have your sales agent. Also, you again going back to the other point, the sales agent will say, okay, it's worth 500,000. What will happen is once you get to the point of taking it forward, is the banks will agree the facility for you, and they will want a valuation undertaken through their panel valuers, which you will have to pay for. So that's a cost that you will have to factor in as well. You also will have some solicitors' costs, because there's some solicitor work that you're going to be looking at as part of the transaction, and they'll also have some security fees that you'll have. I think the next slide is on those parts. Yeah, fees paid. Yeah, yeah. Right. So, so the valuation will be part of that, and it needs to be part of their panel valuer. So even if someone has used one of their panel valuers, it has to go through the bank as part of the transaction, because it has to be addressed to the bank, which is a bit annoying and is costly for yourself, but that's what the banks are going to be using in terms of their loan to value. So it has to be addressed to them. The important thing on healthcare as well, because it's a specialist subject, is you need to make sure that you're dealing with people who understand the sector. So solicitors, you may be able to go down the road and get a solicitor who will quote you quite cheaply to do the transaction, but do they understand what they're doing? Are they making sure that everything is being transferred in the correct way? What you don't want is, if the seller solicitor is a specialist and yours isn't, them guiding you on what the correct thing is to do, because obviously that puts you at a disadvantage as the buyer, because some things can be missed. So make sure you use a specialist. So they may be more expensive, but one, they'll probably make the transaction go quicker, and also they're protecting you as well. Accountants as well. I say Samira as a dental accountant, pharmacy accountant. So again, we understand the sector. It's important, once you go from being a locum where someone may just be doing your sort of day-to-day tax returns, you get your accounts at the end of the year and they tell you how much tax you need to pay. Once you become a business owner, what you really need is some advice from the accountant in terms of how to save tax, what the best things are to do, how do you do things to save you money. So it's important to make sure that you've got a specialist in terms of that. I may as well plug us and say that Samira accountancy, obviously we're very good at this, and more than happy to speak to anyone who can. But there is a big change that from being someone who just works at a pharmacy and just wants to make sure they're paying the right tax, to someone once they're there, what sort of capital expenditure do they need to do going forward? What's the right things that need to be done to save tax in the right way. So it's very important to have someone on there. And then the last bit about sort of fees, you're going to need to pay an arrangement fee to the bank, your solicitor's fees. So you need to factor that in as part of the transaction. I know you think about it at the end, but you're going to need to pay them. So if you can start thinking about, this is what I need for my deposit, this is what I need for my solicitor's fees, these are going to be my arrangement fees. So you've got all those funds set aside, because you don't want to have that horrible moment at the end and realize, oh, I haven't got enough money to finish this transaction. So it all needs to be thought about at the start.
Okay. And if for some reason, whatever, say something went wrong, or money was needed elsewhere, and you didn't have those solicitors' fees factored in, would you? I know you said with the deposit, it has to be borrowed money, has to be gifted. For those fees, would you be able to borrow for that kind of fee at the end? So essentially, once you bought the pharmacy, and you now own it, would you be able to then essentially immediately borrow against it to get some working capital finance to? You
may be able to do some sort of facility to do that. I suppose one thing that we'd be pushing for is trying to get the arrangement fee added onto the loan. If we can, because that will save you quite a bit of money in terms of doing it. So, but once you're in possession of the pharmacy, if you did need some working capital, there are lenders out there that can look at that. So it could certainly be a discussion that we could look at.
But much better to get it factored in.
You're better off if you save for it and have it all ready and know what you've got to pay at the start.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think, yeah, right, last bit. Yeah, we're all done. Yeah, yeah.
Final hurdle.
So yeah. So yeah, in summary, yeah. So we can help you in terms of purchasing your first pharmacy. If you're an existing pharmacist and looking to grow, because there's a lot of pharmacy groups out there. So if you're looking to maybe purchase your second, we can certainly help in terms of doing that as well. What you might find, I was talking about the deposits that you need to have for purchasing a pharmacy. If you're looking to grow and buy that second pharmacy, what you could do in effect on that one is you've got a pharmacy already in place. You may have had it for a period of time, so you've got a goodwill value built up in that pharmacy, and you're looking to purchase a second. What you could do, if you combine them with a lender, they may sort of lend you enough money to buy the second pharmacy, because obviously you'll have the goodwill of your existing pharmacy, the goodwill of the new one, combine them. So you don't physically need to put any cash in, because the overall loan to value would be within inside their matrix, their guidelines. Again, as long as there's enough money within the two pharmacies to service the debt, that's a good way of looking at sort of growing and buying that second pharmacy.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense.
And the last point in terms of the Samira Business Advisor team. So yeah, like I said, we've got accountants who specialise in healthcare, who can help raise finance, who can help with your accounts. Obviously, raising finance. So that's myself and Nigel who can look at that, and obviously marketing, Chris, which is your specialty.
Yeah. So yeah, anyone listening needs any help with marketing, digital, non-digital, anything like that. If you need help getting leads, essentially, give me an email and I'll do what I
can. So yeah, thanks for listening to the talk. I know it's all very top line, because obviously we're not talking in depth about people's cases, but if you do have a pharmacy that you're looking to purchase or thinking about purchasing, and just feel you need some help to take it to the application stage, more than happy if you reach out to me directly. We can have a meeting. I can do them in the evenings if that's easier for you as well, and sort of discuss your case in a little bit more detail and see how we can help.
Brilliant. And when I email this out to everyone later, I will be including Dan's email address, the link to book a consultation with him. So yeah, you'll have all the information you need to get in contact.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Chris. But no, I just want to say thanks again for your time, everyone, and say if you have any questions, more than happy, just reach out to me.
Brilliant. Well, Dan, thank you very much for joining us. That's been brilliant. So, as I said, I'll be emailing this out to everyone soon, and you'll get all the contact details you need. I'll include these slides as well, just for your own benefit. So yeah, if you need any help whatsoever with anything, accounts, tax, finance, marketing, just let us know, and we'll be happy to help.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Chris.
No problem at all. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.